The following is a presentation of the Mat Talk Podcast Network.
It's time to go on the mat, a presentation of the National Wrestling Hall of Fame Dan Gable Museum. It's brought to you by Rolling Ford in Shell Rock.
Welcome to On the Mat on 1650 The Fan. This is Jeff Bradley. I'm going to be your host for the next hour. We're going to have a great show. We've got Sandy Stevens and Rich Powers. They're both going to be inducted into the UNI Wrestling Hall of Fame. Actually, be just the UNI Hall of Fame, but obviously they are heavy affiliated with wrestling. We're going to have those two folks on session 2 and 3. Right now, I've got Brett Robbins, the very new volunteer coach, just named new. Hi, Brett.
How you doing?
I know you're not new. You've been around. You've been around the program quite a while. I mean, you were recruited here. You wrestled here. Then you competed post-collegiately for the Panther Wrestling Club. And now you just got named last week, I believe it was, the new volunteer coach. First thing congratulations, first of all.
Hey, thanks, Jeff.
And then explain to me what a volunteer coach is.
I guess basically what maybe some more of my duties will be is I'll be able to coach on the bench now and be able to work out with guys before meets, before competitions, down to national tournament, things like that. And just be more involved with the day-to-day things, whereas before I would come in and I'd work out on my own, I'd work out with a guy, and then I'd go home and relax, and I'd come back in and work out again in the afternoon, focusing on freestyle techniques, freestyle stuff. So still now just, sharpening up folk style skills and being around and being in the room every day and in the office and just trying to help out any way I can.
Yeah, I mean, just for clarification, so the NCAA lets Division I have 4 spots. So you've got a head coach, 2 assistant coaches, and they call the 4th one a volunteer coach, even though, to me, they're 3 assistant coaches and a head coach. I know I've talked to a lot of people, a lot of confusion with that, but it's going to be Doug Schwab, Lee Roper, and we're going to talk about those guys in a little bit. Randy Pugh and yourself will be heading the show next year. I was thinking this is 4th of July weekend just got over. Great time of the year, baseball, Olympics coming up. Just wonder if you had any fun on 4th of July, or are you still into the training mode with the guys?
Some guys are around and they're working out and training, but as far as me, I mean, I was around, but I grilled out with some friends. Former Panther Alex Dolly's back in town, so he came over and grilled out with him and had a good evening and went and saw fireworks down at the Cattle Congress in Waterloo and just relaxed and had a good time this weekend. Just enjoyed myself.
Yeah, and I think student athletes like this time of year too, where you can focus mainly on getting better. A lot of guys have summer jobs, but you don't have the grind of of a 12 or 15 or 18-hour course load to go with you. So obviously you're the new volunteer coach, assuming you're not going to compete anymore.
Yep, I'm done competing.
So this could be kind of a twofold question. So look back at your All-American status at the U.S. Open. That was just a couple years ago. Talk a little bit about those memories, and then if you think you're giving anything up by not competing or you think you're going to miss it.
I guess I'll start with missing it. I mean, I think if you're a competitor, it's going to be in you no matter what. I know for the last chance qualifier, Max Thompson was cutting weight to get down for it, and I jumped in and I put on the sweatsuit and was running around with him the whole time and making sure he got down the weight, just because you do miss it and you want to be involved and you want to be in the grind, I guess. And so missing it, I'm going to for sure. But I think just being a competitor, I just have to shift my mindset from focusing on me to focusing on the team. And focusing on, the 35, 40 guys that we'll have in that room and trying to put all that energy back into them and trying to get all those guys better. So I just think you're still competitive, but I just have to shift my mindset and just put it into everything into those guys to try to get them better and get UNI to the top. And then as far as placing at the U.S. Open, that was in 2013. I stuck around with the club and I wrestled in a couple tournaments and towards the end, the second half of 2012. And then the next season started, and I made a lot of progress during that fall and the winter. And I mean, did I know I was going to place? I don't know, but I believed it. I really did. And I thought that if the way I trained and the way I was doing things and the way I was being talked to. I mean, I felt this is the best I've ever felt. I just almost felt like I was invincible. So I ended up losing my first match. I had to wrestle in a mini tournament, and ended up making it through that. And then I had to go make weight again. So I had to go cut 8 pounds. Then I had to go back and make weight, and then I had to wrestle the next day in the real tournament. And I actually lost first round of that tournament, and I wrestled all the way back through to place. But great experience. I mean, I wrestled a lot of good guys. I beat Jason Chamberlain to get into the placing rounds, which I don't know. I mean, ever since then he's beaten me, so maybe he made more gains over the last couple of years than I did. But I mean, it was still an accomplishment for me. He was a runner-up, and I'm proud of it. It really kind of brought my career back full circle because I wasn't very happy with how college ended and how it started and then how it ended, and kind of on a low note for me. And Doug asked me to stick around, so placing was a pretty big high for me, and then just being able to train and focus and just the opportunities I got with the Panther Wrestling Club, it was a big deal for me. So I'm pretty appreciative for it.
Can you almost go back to the day that you got done competing as a senior? So you're done competing as a senior at UNI. Could you kind of tell when you got better? I mean, we joke around you magically get better as soon as you graduate.
Yeah, right.
But there's something to that where maybe the pressure of the college thing's off.
It might be. I just, you'd have goes in the room with guys that were close, and then maybe once I got done, I was trying different things, and just maybe my focus was a little different. And the training's different too. It's not every day. It's not an everyday grind. And you wrestle maybe once a month, and then you have time to prepare. And you have some downtime. So maybe that helped me too. But I mean, I really think that as you keep moving on in your career, you do keep getting better, and you keep adjusting, and you keep finding new ways to win and learning new skills and new techniques, and you just keep moving forward, put one foot in front of the other, and get better every day.
So UNI has a new athletic director, David Harris. Just want to ask you if you've had contact with him. I know he stopped in the room a couple times and has talked to the team. And what's your thoughts?
Yeah, he came in and he talked to the team as soon as he got hired, and I think he kind of got the guys fired up. I know they all liked his demeanor. He's a very well-spoken guy. He's a former Division I athlete himself. He played football at Ole Miss, I believe. So he's been at a couple of different schools. He's from Iowa State, and he learned under Pollard. And I think the guys really like him. I know I like the way he wants to win and he wants to do well. And you can kind of go in and see this guy and be like, you know what, I want to follow this guy. He's the leader. And I expect nothing but good things from him. And, I know he wants to keep pushing UNI athletics forward.
We're going to talk a little bit about the coaching staff now. It's changed a little bit from last year. So you've still got, obviously, Doug Schwab, head coach. Mark Schwab, he resigned last, I guess it was April or May. And he's working on his mental training for athletes, and I think you'll see him coaching somewhere at some point. I don't even know if it's little kids, it's high school, junior high. I think he'll get the fever a little bit just to get back in the room at some point. But let's talk about Mark, and then we'll talk about Lee, who ended up getting his job. But what's your thoughts on Mark Schwab?
A very well-spoken guy, a very intelligent guy. I know when he talked, I listened, and I listened very close. He'd do meetings on Sundays, and I'd always go to him. It was talking about mental things, and I still have every email that guy's ever sent me because there was always like a motivational thing in it, or kind of a lesson learned throughout a story. And so I respect the heck out of that guy, and I learned a lot from him. Maybe not just talking to him, but going in and watching him do drills and techniques. I mean, the guy knows wrestling, and from everybody I've heard, he was one of the greats. So, obviously, wish him nothing but the best. But I learned a lot from that guy.
Yeah, I did too. I mean, he's more of a peer to me than obviously he coached you, but I can remember a lot of times where he'd tell me something, and I really didn't even understand it. Mm-hmm. And we're same age, and that's how advanced he was. And he'd kind of have to explain it to me. And we're both 20 years old. That's how advanced he was. But I've told other people that I've seen a lot of wrestling with my naked eyes, not on tape, so not going back into the 50s, 60s, and things like that in the 70s. he's about as good as I've seen.
Yeah, that's all I've heard from a lot of old guys here.
So we've got Lee Roper took Mark's job, or I guess the assistant job anyway, the head assistant.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts on Lee being Doug's right-hand man?
I think they're a good mix. I know how Doug thinks, and I probably lean a little more towards his way on things just because he was my coach for so long. But Lee brings in a different perspective, and I think it's good for a good balance as far as coaches. So it's not all just we're doing this, and maybe I don't want to say there's conflicts, but maybe another guy has a different opinion, and we're all the end goal is to make UNI wrestling better. So even if maybe we disagree, but if we're all working towards the same goal and we can all kind of collaborate and get UNI better, then it doesn't matter. So I think it's going to be a great mix, and Lee's slowly becoming an Iowa boy.
No, he is, and he enjoys his time here, and the guys respond to him, so I think that's the biggest key. So let's talk a little bit about PWC. We've got some events coming up. We're going to have a golf outing. We're going to have that shoot that we have every year.
Yep.
Let's start off first. I believe the golf outing is going to be I think it's next month or maybe it's early September, but go ahead and give us the particular dates.
Okay. The Panther Wrestling Club, they put on the Schwab Mob golf outing every year. So this year it's going to be August 27th, 2016. It'll be held at Pheasant Ridge Golf Course in Cedar Falls, Iowa. I think it's a shotgun start at 10 a.m. Thing about this is it's for the first of 144 paid entries. So you have to get your spot and you have to pay. And we've been sold out the past few years. So if you're interested in doing it, get on it right away. $100 a person or $400 for a team, and that includes your fees, a meal, a couple of drink tickets, a T-shirt this year. So that's a good event, and it's open to everybody. You can register at thepantherwrestlingclub.org, and they'll have forms online where you can register there, or you can get on Zen Planner and register your team or yourself.
So that'd be, what if I don't want to golf, but I'm a local business and I want to be a pin sponsor?
Yep.
What do I do then?
So if you want to do that, on the same page we have sponsorship forms, and they range from either $500 or $200, and they each will get you a sign at the golf course. But the $500 one will get you redirected to the website, and they'll have your logo and your link to your business. And then the $200 one, I believe, will just get you a sign at the golf course that day. But both, they really help out the club and help bring funds in to support our athletes.
And it's a great event. I've done it for probably, I don't know how many years, 15 years.
Right.
And it's just so much fun. Of course, you're golfing with all your best friends.
Yeah.
And there's some great prizes, just great people out there. So I would say if you are nervous that you're not going to get in, send your money in quickly.
Yep.
Get down.
It's going to fill up.
How about that skeet shoot coming up?
Sporting clay shoot. We I think this will be the third or fourth year. I think the fourth year doing it. And it's held at the Cedar Falls Gun Club, and it's off Cedar Wapsie Road. So it's September 18th, 2016. You have a team of 4, and you basically what you do is you bounce around through the 10 stations. You get 10 targets, and you try to knock down as many pigeons and birds as you can. And it's open to everybody. I think last year we had maybe 70, 80. The year before that, 60 to 70. So it's a growing thing, but it's a great event. The guys that set it up, I've shot with some guys, and they shoot a lot, and they say it's one of the best courses they've ever been on. So it's a good event. You're going to be outside, and then we do a meal inside afterwards, and everybody gets a prize and an award. And obviously, if you're a good shooter, you're going to get an award, but and a prize. And if you're a bad shooter, you're going to get one too. So if you're interested in outdoor things or shooting and take a liking to that, it's a great event. And obviously, it goes back into the club. It supports our guys, and all that money goes back to them. So it's a good event for the club.
You're listening to On the Mat with Jeff Bradley and Brett Robbins. Well, let's switch gears here. Let's talk a little more UNI wrestling. Schedule just got released. We've got about 4 minutes, which will not do it justice, but I'm going to just kind of pick and choose a little bit of it. And just to start out, this thing's loaded. This is a great schedule and a great home schedule. So going to start out, looks like a double duel, Nebraska Kearney and Utah Valley. Mm-hmm. And then just a huge duel coming up just a week later on November 18th with Virginia Tech.
Yeah, Thanksgiving weekend, it's going to be an early duel obviously for both teams, but I expect Virginia Tech to come in ranked very, very high.
Oh, they've got to be top 3 or 4, don't they, at least?
I think 2, 3, 4. They got a fourth-place trophy. So they came to the West Gym a couple years ago, and obviously we're excited to have them back. And, hopefully the guys go out and compete hard.
Oh, and then what are we looking at? November 27th, Old Dominion. So Rat Martin will show up at the West Gym. That's always a fun time. And he's not happy about how that ended 2 years ago with Jared Jensen. Jared Jensen.
Fireman's carry and got a pin.
Had to have a pin to win the duel. Jared Jensen, like the man he is, steps up. Fireman's carry right to his back, gets a pin. So, and then a week after that will be the UNI Open, which is always a great event. More or less an all-day event. There'll be just tons of good Division I talent there. Then go on the road to Wisconsin. You know anything about Barry Davis's team coming back?
They have a stud 65-pounder.
Yeah.
Jordan. He's pretty good. Ryan Taylor was All-American, but he's having hip surgery, so his career's done. So it's kind of a downer. But they're a Big Ten team, and they're gonna put out solid wrestlers. Medberry's back at heavyweight, so they're gonna have some quality guys, and we look forward to wrestling them.
So a new event down in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Usually went to Vegas in the fall. Now we're going to the Southern Scuffle.
Yeah, Scuffle's going to be a great event. See some different teams there, like Penn State, Oklahoma State. So we're just going to go there and wrestle some different competition. We've gone to Cliff Keen in the past and Midland, so it's going to be a change of pace for us, but we look forward to it.
Then we're fully in the new year. You've got Northern Illinois at home, a MAC foe. You'll be back on the road for Central Michigan, then on the road at Iowa State. Late January, so they've moved that up probably about 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Looks like we've got Eastern Michigan at home, MAC opponent. On the road, makes sense, Ohio, Kent State University. And then another huge one, Oklahoma coming in first part of February.
Yeah, it's going to be good to have them back. We had a home duel, then an away duel with them, and then it's been off for a couple of years. So maybe when we beat them the first time in the West Gym, maybe when the Panther train kind of started, Blaze Cabell got a big win in overtime, and
I agree.
We won maybe the last 5 weights to win the dual meet. So it'll be good to have them back, and they're going to have good kids. I mean, Cody does a good job with his team, so we're going to have to be ready.
So just about a minute left. Let's talk about, I can't miss this on the schedule. You're going to have Buffalo at home. Then we're going to go down to Columbia, Missouri, wrestle Missouri Tigers right before the MAC Championships. The MAC Championships are in Cedar Falls, Iowa this year. My guess is they're going to be in the McLeod Center.
Yep.
And we also have some other things wrapped around the MAC Conference. And we're bringing some alumni back. You want to talk about that just for a little bit?
We're really looking forward to this event. We're going to put on an all-class reunion and try to get as many old alumni back as we can. So it'll be a good event, and I think there's going to be socials involved, and obviously have good wrestling, but we really look forward to getting as many guys back as we can.
And then the NCAA championships will be March 16, 17, and 18 back in at least my favorite place to have it, St. Louis, Missouri. So that's a tight schedule. You got 3 Big 12 teams, a Big 10 team, an ACC team, and then the MAC is tough as nails too. So let's take a break, and then we'll be back with Rich Powers. You're listening to On the Mat.
1650 The Fan, KCNZ.
You're back on the mat with Jeff Bradley, riding shotgun. Brett Robbins, he's going to stick around with our next 2 guests. My next guest is Rich Powers. He was a 2-time state champ in Illinois, 3-time All-American at the University of Northern Iowa. And I think here's the thing that sticks out the most in my mind about when I look back at his 3-time All-American. His record was 134 and 32. He pinned 50-some-odd guys of the 134 wins. That just shocks me that I think about it now. But I remember watching him wrestle, so it doesn't shock me. But anyway, hi, Rich. How are you doing? I know you're on the phone down there in Des Moines. How are you?
Good.
So right off the bat, I'm gonna start you off with a real tough one. My daughter always wants to know, from first-time guests, what their favorite color is.
That's easy. Purple.
There you go. It's a good answer. And then my son Jake wants to know what your favorite food is.
I would go with OP Pizza on University.
Oh, nice.
That's a good call. That's a real good call. And a good plug, too. So I just kind of alluded to that. 134 wins in your college career, tied for the most at UNI, just outstanding. 54 by pin. So was that, looking back, was that the goal just to try to pin everybody? Were you just trying to score points, or was it not even a thought? You just wrestled?
Well, you, having been mat side a few times, know that things can go bad in a hurry. So why not get it over when you can? A 10-point lead wasn't always safe for me, so that was the best option.
No, I do remember you would give up points to score points, a lot like Joe Laser and sometimes Cologne. But it was an exciting brand of wrestling before like a Joey Laser, and it wasn't. I mean, it was funky, but it wasn't crazy funky like him, and you were kind of a hammer too. So I think a lot of people that remember watching you just have a lot of fond memories, and hopefully you did too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that started from when I started wrestling. That was our the PE teacher, Tim Hack. That was his deal. Hey, you pin people, you get it over with, you send a message, and from 7th grade on, that was kind of my marching orders, and so it really stuck.
So let's go back to when you did start wrestling. Like, how old were you, and how did you get introduced to the sport?
Sure, 6th grade PE, Harvard Junior High. Tim Hack had a wrestling unit. He did not have a basketball unit. He made it clear that we weren't going to play basketball there, and that's really where it started. And at Harvard, you couldn't. That was just a like a little intramural exposure thing at 6th grade, and then it really started in 7th grade. So that was really my first exposure to it.
And then, did you have early success starting in 6th grade, or did you take some lumps?
I think I did. I did well, but not exceptional. We had some kids who placed at the kids state tournament in Illinois, and I qualified, but never placed in 7th or 8th grade. But I think things started to click a little more my freshman year in high school. But I had a great foundation from my start with those coaches in junior high.
Because, looking at it now, you'd be a late bloomer, because nobody starts in 6th grade now. You have to start when you're 4, 5, 6 years old, which I totally disagree with, but that's kind of what it's come down to.
Yeah. I think there's advantages to starting early. I think there's some huge disadvantages, because I think you get a little bit of the Little League syndrome and crazy parents, and it's life or death, and I think that's foolish. I played a little basketball in junior high, and oddly enough, my son also wrestles and plays basketball,
right.
And I just think it's important to have that healthy balance. But yeah, a little bit of a late bloomer, but I also still was very hungry for the sport, and was very passionate about it in college, where I think for some people that walk into college with 200 matches already under their belt, it may be getting a little tired or a little old.
So who was your major influences? I'm sure you have coaches and parents in there. Just talk a little bit about people that kind of guided you along when you were a youngster.
Yeah, well, a lot of people know my dad was a very talented athlete, but passed away early. He passed away when I was in 3rd grade, and he had played football at Notre Dame and in the NFL for the Steelers and Vikings. So I really didn't know him that well, and so my mother, who really was the mainstay of our family and really was the disciplinarian and the encourager, and so she really had the biggest impact on the 3 kids in our house. She definitely was very encouraging. We now know that she lied to us growing up. She would believe in us more than she should have, and it rubbed off on us. She would tell us we were good enough to compete with anybody in anything, or you're just as important as anybody else, but no more important. And that really, we probably grew up sheltered and had a false sense of how where we should rank with things, and so it rubbed off on me, because I really wasn't a huge fan of the sport I really didn't know much about Iowa and Iowa State coming to UNI. And so it wasn't a big deal my freshman year, first dual meet to wrestle Iowa. I just thought, well, okay, let's see what happens. And so that isolation or ignorance was actually not a bad thing for me.
What a great lesson for mom or dad to teach, though. You're just as good as anybody, but you're not better than anybody. So kind of go make your way. And I don't know if that's shelter or not. I wish more parents were like that now.
Yeah. And she was more of is more of a family-first person. One of my arch rivals in college, I wrestled probably 12 or 14 times, was Bart Chelsvik, and super guy. But my mother lost her spouse. His dad, they lost their mother, and so she felt like we should be best friends because we both lost our parents. And sit down and talk to them. They're wonderful people. and it was just kind of funny. It's like, geez, Mom, he just tried to rip my head off. I don't really, that's probably not. But that's how she is. So makes you think about things a little bit different. There's a little more to life than wrestling. It is important, but there's life after it.
So let's talk a little bit about your high school career. You won 2 state titles after starting basically in 6th grade. Either one of those mean more than the other? Did you kind of celebrate them the same way, or was it just kind of a ho-hum and you're back to school on Monday?
My freshman year was, I'll go back to that. So I lived in Harvard, Illinois. As an 8th grader, I followed Harvard wrestling. They happened to win the Class A in Illinois. At the time, there was only 2 divisions for about 400 high schools, and so Harvard won the Class A title. They were phenomenal, and so my mother, in her vision for our family, we were going to go to Marion, which was a small Catholic school run by some nuns and some obviously other teachers, and they hadn't won many matches ever. They'd never had a state qualifier, and so I was hoping to go to this traditional powerhouse, a Waverly Shell Rock type of thing, and I ended up at a place where they couldn't fill out a lineup, and there wasn't the tradition there. And so that was probably good because it got me in the lineup right away. I was a 132-pounder, couldn't make it at 132 or 138, so my brother said, hey, go 145, nobody's there. So I wrestled most of my freshman year at 145, and unfortunately our 132-pounder got hurt at the end of the year. I was able to move back down for the regional tournament and almost qualified for state. I beat the number 1 ranked 132-pounder in the state, but then I lost to the number 3 ranked wrestler to go to state. But it gave me a lot more opportunities to wrestle and I had great coaches there where I wouldn't have had that opportunity at Harvard. And I kind of had the best of both worlds. I had my friends and some workout partners at Harvard, but I also had my coaches and friends at Marion. And then my sophomore year, I got on track and had a nice season. I got beat in the semifinals and ended up placing 3rd, and probably should have won that match. Turned left when I should have gone right. Got pinned. Didn't work out for me, but that kind of really spurred me on. That summer I won state freestyle and state Greco, and then won my last 78 matches, and I think I had over 70 pins in the last 78 matches in high school.
You're listening to On the Mat with Jeff Bradley and Rich Powers. Let's talk about your recruiting process now, and it's funny, everybody calls it a recruiting battle, where I've come to find out now with most of the guys I talk to get recruited, they kind of know. It's not a huge fight between a bunch of schools, but I know Wisconsin wanted you pretty bad. I know Iowa State did. And then I think Notre Dame did because they still had wrestling then, and with the tie with your father, I would have thought that would have made sense too. But how did UNI come away with getting Rich Powers?
Yeah, well, really, one thing that stuck out was at the time, Don Briggs was pretty upfront to say, hey, we've got a 100% graduation rate with if guys stick with our program, wrestle all 4 or 5 years, they graduate. That kind of stuck with me. Also, I knew at Iowa State and Wisconsin, I had a scholarship for the first year, but if I wasn't in the lineup the second year, money was up in the air. And at that time, you had Kevin Jackson at Iowa State and Mike Van Arsdale at Iowa State and Mike Volker at 190. So I was probably conservative financially and realistically saying, you know what, I don't have a prayer at making the lineup at Iowa State. I really felt like UNI was a family. You had Jim Miller and Don Briggs, two different people that really made the whole program work, and then I was also really excited about having Joel Greenlee there to think, hey, I can really learn something from this guy, and really it was a comfortable place, a place I felt like I could be successful, and really that was good or bad. That's why. It just had an attraction. The success they had with Mark Schwab, I thought, you know what, there's a young guy that came in and did well. Bam Pastelnik came in and did well, and I thought, well, I could be like maybe one of those guys.
We're going to talk about your UNI career here in just a second, but just want everybody to know that, when I think of Rich Powers, a lot of people think, hey, great wrestler. I actually think you're probably the epitome of the student athlete, and this is why. 3-time All-American, obviously, great wrestler. Got his bachelor's and master's from the University of Northern Iowa, then went on and got your doctorate in education, I believe, from Loyola, and you're now a superintendent down at Bondurant for Art. So I just want to get that out there. A lot of people think, athletes not very smart. You are a very intelligent man. You've worked hard at both wrestling, craft, and education, so congratulations on that.
Well, I've got some family members that would disagree with my with a lot of that, but really, wrestling and my family, I think, are the two things that instilled in me that effort pays off. Because my junior high coach would tell you that I was not very talented. I gave him a lot of gray hair. It took me 10 times to figure out some simple moves, But I've always felt like, you know what, you may not be able to be the best at something, but you can be pretty darn good if you are persistent and work at it. And that really, academically, I had to work very hard, and athletically, I had to work hard. But you're right, a lot of people don't recognize that or see it. But thanks.
So your UNI career, obviously hugely successful, 3-time All-American. If you want to walk through sophomore, junior, senior year, or just pick out some great thoughts of national tournaments or some big all-star matches that you wrestled in, just go ahead and talk about your career at UNI and your highlights.
Yeah, I think first of all, getting in the lineup as a freshman was as a redshirt freshman was pretty exciting for me, and I felt like I didn't think I was ready. But when Don Briggs, Jim Miller, Joel Greenlee, Mike Schwab, when those guys are telling you you're ready, that means a lot. You believe them. And so I think I probably got tired towards the end of my freshman year. It was a long season. I had beaten a couple of All-Americans, but at the end of the day, didn't get it done at the national tournament. And I was, probably happy it was over. I just wasn't prepared for that long of a grind. I didn't have in high school, I didn't have as many challenges, and so tournaments were not that rigorous. In college, everybody's strong, so there's no easy week, there's no easy month, there's no easy match. But I think as a sophomore, I was a little more focused, and had a guy from Bloomsburg that I lost to twice that year, who I just couldn't score on. He was a very Scott Brown was his name, very strong, short, stocky guy. I just couldn't get him to do anything, couldn't move. And actually, my sophomore year, that's who I lost to first round of the tournament, and had to come back through the backside to place. But that was a good experience. I probably was somewhere in that top 8 area. Probably not in the top 4. So it was a good result, and I was excited and pretty happy and proud. My junior and senior year, I think I was, knocking at the door of winning, and for whatever reason, didn't get it done. Had some injuries as a senior, so in a lot of regards, those 2 years are, although they were pretty successful, were pretty disappointing too. But again, I think I had some nice highlights and won some big matches that I was proud of.
We're kind of running up the clock here. We're going to have to close this segment out. I just, first of all, want to thank you very much. And real cool thing that you're going to be nominated for the Hall of Fame. You're going to be inducted here in the fall, and we'll get a hook up then. But really appreciate you being on the show today.
Hey, appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Okay. We'll be back with On the Mat.
1650 The Fan, KCNZ.
You're listening to On the Mat, Jeff Bradley and Brett Robbins. Second guest, Sandy Stevens. I consider her, and I think a lot of people do, the voice of amateur wrestling. And if you've been to a national tournament, if you've been to, it could be anywhere from a little kids tournament to a national tournament, and she's done Olympic tournaments announcing. Her, like Rich Powers, got nominated for the UNI Hall of Fame, be inducted in, I believe it's October. Sandy, are you out there?
I am, and it's in September.
In September. I'm not going to miss it, so I appreciate you correcting me on that.
That's okay.
Okay, so you're a first-time guest, so you have to go through this. These are my kids' questions. Morgan wants to know your favorite color.
My favorite, purple, no question.
So we're 2 for 2.
It was purple before I went to UNI.
That's good. And my son Jake wants to know your favorite food.
Oh, my goodness, that's a tough one. Oh, wow. Maybe pizza, but chocolate comes a close second.
Ooh. Well, that's almost mirror image, because Rich Powers said purple and OP pizza. And now you went
Okay.
purple and pizza. Okay. Good answer, right. Sandy. Hey, we're going to start out right away, and I know I really want to know, because we've never talked about this, how did you meet Bear, your husband, at UNI, or did you know him before that?
No, we were high school sweethearts.
Okay.
We started dating when we were 15, and I had known him for probably about a year because we were in the same high school, but we really hadn't talked or anything like that. And one day, we were both on our way from our homes to the school for a play practice. He was on the crew, I was in the cast, and I had a Mounds bar, and it comes with 2 little sections.
Yeah.
And I offered one of them to him, and that did it.
That's all it took was a little half a Mounds bar? That's great.
Absolutely right. We started dating at 15. He went out for wrestling that fall for the first time, and because I was interested in him, I decided I better learn about what he was interested in, and fell in love with wrestling and the people involved in it at the same time I fell in love with him.
And then you both came to UNI together, both graduated from UNI, which is super.
We both graduated from UNI. I actually went to University of Iowa my first 2 years and then transferred.
Okay, but you wised up, though.
Oh, I did. Absolutely. Absolutely, yes.
So I know this story, but I want everybody to hear it. How did you get started in announcing?
Well, Bear was, my husband Bear, Bob or Bear, became the head wrestling coach at Kennedy High School in Cedar Rapids. We had first been teaching, and he'd been an assistant coach at Cedar Rapids, Washington, which was our high school alma mater. And then Kennedy opened, he became the new head coach. And the night before the first tournament we hosted, and it was just with 3 other teams, he came home from setting up the mats, and all of a sudden he went, "Oh, no." And I said, "What's wrong?" And he said, "I just realized I don't have an announcer for tomorrow. But since you know about wrestling and you'll be there anyway, would you just sit at the microphone, welcome people, and assign the wrestlers to the 2 mats?" And I said, "Well, I guess so." But that's how it started. What a lot of people don't know is that about, probably a year and a half before that, I had taken the certification test to become a licensed referee in Iowa. We didn't know it at the time. I just wanted to prove to myself I had the knowledge because Bear kept saying, "You know him almost as much as I do." And I didn't want to be an active referee, but I passed the test. I got the certification, and later we were told I was the first female to be certified in the United States as a referee. But what it did when I sat down at the microphone was give me the background. So I just immediately, naturally, started doing kind of play-by-play and explaining the referee's signals and the scoring.
So you never officiated, even though you were licensed to do it? You never did, even a little kids tournament?
I did a junior high meet in Cedar Rapids. Bear's former high school coach, Lloyd Wilson, who is a member, he's deceased now, but a member of the Iowa Wrestling Hall of Fame, a well-known man, said, "Sandy, you ought to do one." And so I agreed to do so if there was no publicity. And I did do a junior high meet. Fortunately, it came out okay, but my concern was that not having wrestled, I was afraid I would not be able to recognize potentially dangerous holds. I knew, on the test what they were, how to respond to it, but not having wrestled, I thought, was a disadvantage, and I didn't want to be responsible for that. But that wasn't why I had done it anyway. But
so, I was thinking about that, how you got started, and it's funny how probably at the time it didn't seem like anything, just helping your husband a little bit out of a jam. But now you look back 35 years of announcing excellence. I mean, there was no way you could see that coming down the pike, right?
Absolutely not. And what happened 3.5 years later, we hosted a sectional freestyle meet at Kennedy High School. And Bob Siddons, well-known man, Dan Gable's high school coach, West Waterloo, was at that tournament. And he said, "Sandy, we're hosting the first ever state high school freestyle tournament. Would you come up and announce that?" And I did. And while I was there, the coaches at the University of Iowa, who were Dave McCuskey and Gary Kirtlemeyer at the time, said, "We're hosting the first ever National Junior Freestyle Championships for what was then the United States Wrestling Federation, but now, of course, USA Wrestling." So I did the first one, and 46 years later, I'll be doing that at Fargo this year, right?
So that leads me to my next question. Do you still get, and maybe, I just want to know, do you get nervous? Do you get amped up? Is it different between Division I and the cadet finals or the Olympic trials or the Olympics? Because you've done all those. Do you get nerved up before any of those?
Oh, gosh, that's a good question. I don't approach any of them, any tournament, just kind of a lackadaisical attitude, because the people who are there, the wrestlers, the coaches, the parents, the fans, whatever the tournament is, that's as important to them as the Olympics are to other people. And I've always felt that people say to me, "You're so enthusiastic." That's not put on. I want wrestling fans. I want people who are there, whether they're longtime wrestling fans or whether they're going to a tournament or an event, even a dual meet for the first time. I want them to understand what's going on, but to be excited about it. I want them to be hooked. And so it's not difficult for me to be enthusiastic.
Sandy, how much time, and I don't know if you can even quantify this, how much time do you think you would invest before the Division I tournament so you're comfortable that you've got everything right? Is it weeks? Is it months? I mean, I don't think you can break it down into hours.
No, it's over a period of weeks, but, and I try to keep things as we go through the year that I think will be relevant. It might be trivia. It might be the fact that someone has set a school record, but then it's not too long before the tournament until the qualifiers are named, and that's when the most work, I guess, takes place. Everything from pronunciation of their names to records, that type of thing. I think most people don't realize how much background work goes into announcing a tournament. For example, I've done the California High School State Championships for 28 years, and they'll send to me the qualifiers the Sunday before the tournament starts on Friday. So by the time I go to California, I have the records of those wrestlers, of course, but I also have made myself lists of the returning the returning placers, state placers. I also have checked to see how many of them and which of them have placed in either the National High School Championships or the National Junior Freestyle or Greco-Roman Championships. So that's some of the background work that I do for that tournament, for example.
You're listening to On the Mat with Jeff Bradley and special guest Sandy Stevens. My next question is, you were kind of unceremoniously dropped from these last national tournament out in New York City. I don't know who made the call, the NCAA / the organizing committee in New York. I'll go on record, as thousands have since then. Huge catastrophe, huge mistake. But you handled that with as much grace and class as I've seen. Now that it's been an amount of time, and hopefully you're back at St. Louis, I haven't heard anything. It'd be great if you could break that on this show. But what's your thoughts now, 6, 7, 8 months away from that?
It was still a huge disappointment. I was there, but it was very, very difficult sitting in the stands. I had received the call in mid-November from someone at the NCAA saying that they had chosen to go in a different direction. I was very disappointed that A.L. Hazlip, who was my co-announcer for the last few years there, and I were not given the opportunity to go in a different direction. But it was painful. It was really painful for the first time in 35 years to be at that tournament and not announcing. I have no idea what's going to happen in St. Louis. I would certainly go back without question. I would be thrilled because I really miss that.
So our wrestling room at University of Northern Iowa is the Bill Cole Wrestling Room. Sandy, you essentially named that. Why was that the name that you wanted to bear the wrestling room?
There was no question when they asked me about naming it. I certainly didn't want it named after Bear and or me. Bill Cole was the epitome to me and to my husband of what a coach should be. He was a mentor. He was a father figure. He made such a difference in my husband's life and really had a lot to do with the kind of wrestling coach my husband became. He was, I can't say enough about the man. Yeah. I had such tremendous respect for him, and I think everybody who wrestled for him felt the same way, whether it was at UNI or whether it was later at Penn State. The sign outside the room says, Bill Cole, a man who used wrestling to teach the lessons of life. And that's what wrestling does best.
Okay, we have 1 minute left. Coach Schwab wanted me to ask you, he says you have a picture for the weight room. So I want to know,
yes,
I want to know what that picture is, and he wants to know when we're going to get it.
Well, I'm planning to bring it up in September when I come up for the Hall of Fame. It's a picture of a wrestler, almost a professional wrestler kind of thing. It's framed, and it says Bear across it. But what makes this very special, I think, is that it was drawn for us by a man named Frank Miller. And at the time, Frank Miller had about, I think the year before, won the Pulitzer Prize for cartooning for the Des Moines Register. So it's not just any drawing or any cartoon. I think the fact that a Pulitzer Prize winner did it, and it's fun. It's just fun, and I thought it might be appropriate in the weight room, the workout room.
Yeah, that's great, Sandy. I want to appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to be on the mat today, and we will see you in September at the Hall of Fame.
Great. Thank you so much for calling. I appreciate it.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to On the Mat. Good night.
You've been listening to On the Mat, a presentation of the National Wrestling Hall of Fame Dan Gable Museum, and brought to you by Rolling Forward in Shell.
This show is part of the Mat Talk Podcast Network. For more wrestling podcasts, head over to MatTalkOnline.com.